So it's great to see y'all. Hello, Cuyler. Hello, Patrick. And I really appreciate you both hopping on this call with me today. Yeah, Cuyler. The only other Cuyler I know is that villain kid from Cobra Kai.
I know.
Right.
And from Irvine, where I'm at too. So that was awesome.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah. You both couldn't be any more different. Have you seen season 3?
Oh yeah.
So good. And we won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. But then again, I'm not sure anyone cares except for us.
Great show. I loved that show.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
When I was at SCAD, it was like either everybody was too old to care or too young to care. So it was very, I didn't have very many people to enjoy Cobra Kai with when it was on YouTube Red.
Right.
So
they filmed a bunch of that here, right?
Yeah. The mall scenes. I mean, I didn't realize how, like, what a hotspot Atlanta was until I moved there for film and television. Like, there was this snow cone place that my wife and I used to go to where we lived out in Lithia Springs. And I remember driving by the snow cone joint once and seeing this old abandoned like building. And I was like, that looks so much like the arcade from Stranger Things when they go to this arcade. And it turns out that was one of the filming locations, which actually ended up being
crazy.
Yeah, it was the arcade.
Crazy.
And it was also the same location they used for the video store that they show, which is really interesting. Yeah, so many shows get shot there. It's crazy.
Dude, I ran into a couple of them, the actors from the show, in Target, right in Atlantic Station.
Yeah, a lot of them get houses there. Like,
right.
I think Andrew Lincoln from Walking Dead has a house in Atlanta. We actually saw him in a skateboard shop. But then again, I'm sure Cuyler gets a lot of this with the gallery and just being in LA in general.
Sure. There's probably more in Atlanta right now than LA, honestly. So
totally.
Yeah,
that's what I've heard.
That's right. Yeah. So I figured we could start with the Lionsgate Terminator Total Recall stuff, and then slowly move into the more complicated portion of today's session, which is the NFT. So again, thanks so much for joining us, you guys. For those of you who don't know, these are two super talented artists with two very different disciplines, but are somewhat crossing into one another in a sense, because Patrick's been doing these gorgeous like 3D renders of celebrities lately. And the 3D art is actually leaning more towards illustration in a sense, to the point where even one of my students asked me how Cuyler did the Kanye piece. And I had to say, no, that was Patrick who did that.
Damn.
So lots of similarities between the two guests today, but also some big differences in overall like output media and then also clientele as well. So y'all can find these two on Instagram, Cuyler Smith and Patrick_4D. And they share their artwork and process regularly. So follow their accounts for all the good stuff, and you can also find Cuyler's work on Gallery 1988's website. He's one of the contributing artists with that gallery, and he's actually got some stuff for purchase there. And Patrick can also be found on Skillshare, which is something I learned about Patrick last time we talked. So is there anything you both would like to plug beyond that? Anywhere else we can find you, or are those the main sources?
Pretty much. I'm trying to think. That's the main guys, unless I'm forgetting something. Good for me, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So Cuyler visited with us, I think, about a year ago, before all of the COVID madness went down in the world, and he talked about his process for working with Sony to create the Resident Evil, I believe, the key art for the either Blu-ray DVD release. And it was a great chat, and it was super helpful because all the students at the time were pursuing a Blu-ray package as their final project in my class. And we're currently at that stage yet again. So your insight will be super helpful as this new batch of students kind of takes on these final Blu-ray projects. So go ahead and start us off, Cuyler. Like, how did you come into contact with Lionsgate? Who who made the initial connection? How did they hear about your work, right? And what were some of, I guess, the differences and maybe similarities between them and Sony?
Yeah, so one of the art directors has been following me for a long time, and I did some work for them, back to like the trading card series that I do. There was a movie that they had like straight to video that they wanted to do some marketing for that, like about a year ago. So that's how I got to know Lionsgate, and actually it was, I guess, like a year and a half. It was pre-COVID, and I actually got to go there and visit and kind of get to meet everyone in person, and it was great, so I got to kind of showcase some of the other work that I did. So I brought those Resident Evil steelbooks in, and Lionsgate does quite a few steelbook releases. And I've just always wanted to work with them more. So it started with that initial trading card assignment, and then it led into this one, which was great. So basically the way that it starts off is, I just get like an email from my client, and then we set up a Zoom call, and we've worked together before. So we have a good relationship, and basically they get these requests from vendors, and this one is going to be exclusive through Target. So Target wanted to put together a steelbook for Terminator and Total Recall as a combo pack. And a lot of times they don't really do like the combos. They just keep it like the individual movie. But they wanted to do something a little bit different with this one. And the art director had my Fight Club lenticular card that I did years ago. And they used that as a starting point of kind of what they wanted to do for the general idea of the steelbook. So the game plan is to have one image on the front, which would be like, depending on which way you do it, would be like Terminator 2, and then the other one would be Total Recall. And then they have a full slipcase with the lenticular moving back and forth. So basically they just wanted a extremely detailed portrait that would have, like landmarks and key shapes that could shift back and forth. It was a tight deadline compared to other ones. So basically got that. And then I cranked out the black and white renders in a couple days to get approval on that. And then there's just a lot of, like back and forth, and just making sure that everything's going to be ideal for the likeness, because whenever you're working with likenesses on steelbooks like this, it has to get approved from the talent themselves. So it has to go through the agent and the manager first, then they kind of give you feedback, and you go back and you adjust and you tweak, and then it goes to the individual themselves. So luckily everything went through. And so I mean that was pretty much it. I do have like in progress and kind of like how it evolved, if anyone wants to see that, as well as like some videos of the lenticular motion. But just kind of let me know how you want to move forward, or any questions, or
I mean, so this interesting. It's like, first, before you show us this stuff, let me ask you a question. So I know you've been doing the lenticular stuff for a bit. Like, you did them with the cards. At least that was the first time I saw them done, was with the cards. Do you think that, so this was something that you chose to do, right? This wasn't something somebody told you to do. You just had thought of like, how can I make these trading cards a little bit more interesting? And so then the lenticular idea kind of popped in your head, or how did that happen? Like, was somebody commissioning you to do that, or was it just your idea to do it?
Just constantly trying to push yourself and figure it out. I mean, like I see all these things that, are coming up, like some like, like we're talking about like NFTs and stuff like that in the future. But I just wanted to play around in that and see what I could do, and try to wrap my head around the possibilities of communicating a narrative, because that's what I tell my students. I'm also a professor, and just making sure that there's some type of story and interaction. And it intrigued me. So, you start out and you try to figure it out, and you still tinker with it. You never really know what the results are gonna be like, because there's like color shifting, and then there's parts where there can be like part of the image that shows through depending on when it cycles through. There's all kinds of fun things that you can work with. So it's just fun for me to kind of take that challenge and see what can happen. Awesome.
This is the reason I ask is because this is a classic example of part of what I talk to the students about, is this idea of doing things for yourself first, and becoming, this is an industry where you can get paid to do what you love to do. And the lenticular thing that you started doing led to all these opportunities. And like, you get to do a lenticular, steelbook for Lionsgate, and that's amazing. It wasn't like they just came to you with that idea. They had seen what you had done before. And it seems like the last time we chatted, and again, I want you to showcase the lenticular process for those who don't know, if you have something to show for that. But it seems like the last time we chatted about art and illustration, you were in what I call the snowball position, where you had mentioned that you worked with so-and-so, and then so-and-so found you through so-and-so and that gig, and that it just sort of keeps snowballing in a sense. And as you know, this happened to me just after my first gig with the New Yorker. So it's clear that there can be a big break for an illustrator, or like a breakthrough assignment for illustrators where they all of a sudden find themselves having to push their portfolios maybe less because they sort of end up in the pool of artists that are being chosen for specific assignments. So I suppose my question to you is, what are some ways for our students to kind of, especially the students who aspire to be illustrators, like what are some ways they can find themselves or put themselves in that sort of snowball situation? Because, that's a great place to be, like when you describe that idea of like, yeah, and so saw the work I did at the gallery, and then that led to this, and then that led to that. So what are some healthy best practices that you think someone can implement in order to obtain and sort of maintain that kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, so mainly, like I always, and I tell this to my students as well, is I just try to get outside my comfort zone. Whenever I start to feel safe, I feel like I'm plateauing. So I want to make sure that I'm constantly pushing myself. And I do the same thing for my students, to where you have to figure out what you really know and what you can work on. So I strive for that challenge, and I get inspired by fellow artists and classmates. And it's just always trying to find ways to communicate better and move forward. So, and to kind of piggyback on that, like the whole reason that worked is because like when I went to the studio and I was able to meet the art directors in person, and the whole point behind that was to kind of establish this relationship. And that's what I tell my students as well, is that you want to just kind of expand and have this working relationship to where they trust you to meet your deadlines. They know that you're dependable and reliable, and and they had this deadline that was tighter than normal, and they were trying to do something that at least Lionsgate hasn't done before with the lenticular. And the reason why that came up with the old card is because I had worked on some cards from them, and then I, as a thank you, when I was at the studio, I gave the art director that Fight Club card, and had it on his desk. And when this opportunity came up, he was just looking at it. It's like, oh, that would be kind of cool if we tried this. So you never know what's going to happen. And, we had always hoped that we'd be able to work on a steelbook at some point together. And then just everything kind of lined up for that particular one. And Tony knows how much I love Terminator 2. It's like my favorite film of all time. So to have that opportunity was just a no-brainer.
I mean, Arnold is just, I think I told you this, but Arnold is my favorite actor of all time, like ever. Like, I'm not sure there's a genre Arnold Schwarzenegger hasn't tackled. I just can't imagine somebody like Stallone or Van Damme or even Steven Seagal doing like Jingle All the Way, or even Mr. Freeze. Arnold is just so perfectly fluid. He transitioned so well out of the 80s muscle action thing. And I don't know, maybe Van Damme could have done Jingle All the Way as well. Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to see like a screen test for that, but I'm like pretty sure Van Damme could have done it. But yeah, again, nobody here probably cares about that more than you and I. So but yeah, so I think that's so awesome, man. I mean, just you described that the last time we talked, and I think that freelancing can be something that seems terrifying and daunting at first, but it gets to a point where I feel like the majority of freelancers I know, they don't live a life of stress because they have so many like eggs in different baskets. And they're just constantly passing things around, and it doesn't even feel like work anymore. Like it probably didn't feel like this huge workload to like hand a card to an art director. It just is this thing that you naturally do intuitively. And so this was a quick turnaround. I don't know why I just assumed that this would have been like a longer. What was the main, like from the first email to the final like delivery of the product? Like how long was it?
Well, it just like maybe over 2 weeks.
Wow, that's much shorter than I thought. I thought it would have been like several months. Did you do the
No, yeah,
switch
it
back?
was fairly quick. And you know, that was part of the upfront, you know, because he knew that I could work fast because I've done a couple other like really quick jobs for them just for like smaller, you know, properties. And having that reputation and being reliable, it worked out well. And especially because Arnold is, and especially his camp is pretty particular on likeness. So even before we sent it out, there was a lot of rounds internally through. There was a lot of people on the project just kind of getting their eyes in, like, oh, do we need to move the chin in? Do we need to do this?
Oh,
So there's a lot of that like tweaking, like, but a large grunt of it was done like over the week, like the first 2 days of the weekend that I started working on it. So I try to front load it and get as much done as possible. So that way the little, you know, edits and tweaking didn't take as long as originally expected. So we were able to meet the deadline and exceed it and move forward.
That's great. And so are you still just doing the front cover for these, or is the spine and the back in the mix as well?
Well, this is both, because like the way that they do it is you'll have one image, and then if you flip it on the other side, you could showcase either one. So if you're a Total Recall fan, you could put it on the Total Recall side, or if you're a T2 fan, you could put it on that side, or you could have the slipcover case and you could just rotate between the two.
That's awesome. And I've been seeing on Instagram that you've been like more interested or experimenting with the iPad a lot. Was this T2 Steelbook done in Procreate or?
Yeah, a little bit of both. A lot of it of the original rendering was in Procreate, and then a lot of like maybe some of the edits. I still like to color mostly in Photoshop just because I'm most familiar with that. But a lot of my drawing and value work I do in Procreate now because it speeds up the process a little bit.
That's awesome. So let's take a look. For those of you who don't know what lenticular, the lenticular effect is, Cuyler's gonna share a screen and maybe talk us through what that looks like. The first time I had experienced the lenticular effect was as a kid with Pogs and maybe even some like Marvel trading cards, and also those scenes in Back to the Future where the newspaper, you know, changes when Marty and Doc sort of like alter the past to a point where it changes the future. And those were my intros to lenticular printing. So for those of you who are familiar with those things, then you might already know what we're about to show you here.
Yeah, so let me see if this is going to work out all right, because a lot of like I have some that are GIFs and they don't really play that well on Photoshop. But I'm just going to do it in preview here, so let me know if it works.
All right.
So let's see. Can everyone see that image, or is it just us still on the screen? It's just the video.
I can see you and the image. Yeah.
Okay. So this is what it looks like. So you'll have like one cover where it's just like T2 and the other one where it's Total Recall. And you'll see like a little example of what the slipcase is going to look like on the bottom. So the art director sent me those, but this is kind of what it looked like. So before I even had the background, this was the first like rough pass, and the background was going to be added on later. And then, you know, so like a lot of like the bottom stuff wasn't done, but I was mainly focused on like the head. And then even though he doesn't have the full head of hair on that scene, they kind of wanted to make sure that he still had that traditional like Arnie haircut for that one. But, you know, they wanted the endoskeleton exposed.
Did they give you reference to work from, or were they cool with you pulling from your own?
Well, they had asked, you know, if they wanted to give me copies of the films, but I had both of them already in my library. But I got like a couple stills, but nothing that would work primarily for what they wanted to do, because they wanted a straightforward shot, and they wanted it kind of like bust up. And then we were going to talk about what we're going to have in the background. You know, obviously on Total Recall, they knew they wanted the machine. But as far as lenticulars, you need certain shapes to match up.
Yeah.
So at this point, I still didn't know what I wanted to have. And then, you know, we had talked back and forth. So then I decided to have like that industrial like lava from that chemical plant, like dipping to where it would match that circular element. So you can see here, like this was just mainly focusing on like the portrait. So this was like the first pass that I sent him. for that particular one. And this was the first pass on the total recall. And you can see there's still a lot of work to be done, you know, in terms of like the facial structure. And then we go back through and we adjust like the hair. But you can kind of see like first round, see if this is going to work in terms of what they're going for.
I think total recall is like a little maybe off the page a little bit.
Wait,
from my view, there it is. Okay.
Oh, it's not showing the whole thing here. Hold on. Let me just do it in Photoshop here. 1 second.
And while you open that up, I don't know about you, but when I did that T2 1-of-1 trade with you, it was hard for me to find good reference of Arnold with the endoskeleton exposed in a way that like worked well. Did you have that same issue, or was it just easier for you, I guess?
Well, similar to what, hold on, let me just load up these on Photoshop 1 second. Similar to what we had talked about before when you came into my class was, you know, I kind of hodgepodge together a couple different images to use as reference. And then as far as, you know, lining things up, the total recall was just kind of done from memory. I looked at like the hair, but you're not going to find a perfect image from both movies that you can just kind of move through. So yeah, it's like a mixed media of like different images. And then obviously like you'll see like when we go through this, the outfit and everything has changed as well. So hopefully everybody can see the full image here, but you know, mainly it was just kind of focused on, you can kind of see like, you know, they wanted it like ultra rendered with like the skin tone. So that's where a lot of my focus went. And then you can see the bottom section. I still had questions. So like, I'll give them this and I'll be like, okay, do you want the bullet strap going across? How much do you want to see? So a lot of that area was kind of left open until I could get feedback, as well as the background that was still going to be worked on. And then the first pass on the total recall, you can see like the likeness is still not exactly there, but you can determine that, okay, I'm going to have this circular element in the back, and then the shoulders are going to line up. And then, you know, the outfit as well as the hairstyle going back and forth, making sure that's going to come together. So let me see if I can do this one. So when we flip back and forth, let me see if it'll work on this. It might not, but let me try. I'll try to put it in here. So you can see like when it switches,
yeah,
you want to like test it, right? So like I would make like a GIF for each version, right? So that this eye would stay constant, and then, you know, I'd start to adjust a couple things, but then the hairline would tweak a little bit as well. So it takes a little like getting used to figure out how that's all going to work out. So that was the first pass, and then I went back through and I made sure that, let me go back here, that I could get the background worked out. So this is what happened with the background, and you'll start to see how this shifts around. Let me share my screen one more time. So then they got this, you know, like just a couple hours later, where you can just figure out, okay, I'm going to take that circular element and have that match up. And then you can see the strap has been adjusted, and then obviously the lighting has been worked out, and you start to get some of like the embers and everything, and trying to create the depth so it matches up. And then from here, basically I would take it to color, and then it was mainly just tweaking like centimeters and fractions on the chin, on the nose, on the ears, and just making sure that I could go in the right direction. So let's see, this is what the final color looked like. And I always just do my black and whites first. And then here's what the color version looked like. We had to tweak the hair a couple times, and you'll always get notes like, okay, make the hair shorter, make some individual spikes pop out. And then we had to kind of like move the endoskeleton eye over a little bit. But I wanted to make sure that it was like as detailed as possible, you know, for what they were looking for. So I spent a little bit more time on that. And then this is what you can see how this changed. This was the total recall, right? And then this was the one that I kind of rendered this one after the T2. And then the hair starts to adjust a little bit. You'll see how this changes to the final. but like all like the hair, and like I did a lot of those details, and then there's added textures to make it look more like skin. And then I ended up kind of removing that little bottom ear there, but hinting at like facial hair and skin tone, and just trying to match everything up. But the main thing is like this circular element would unite both of them, and then that one eye, so the transition would be a little bit more seamless. So mainly like with Lenticular, there's 3 options. You can do a transition, which is kind of what I've been focusing on lately. You can do a 3-dimensional effect where certain things start to kind of move and pop out, or you can also have an animated effect, and it kind of depends on how many frames you're going to put forth. But I'm definitely looking into doing more of those, and then I can kind of show, because they're still making them right now. It's supposed to be on the shelves, I think, mid-May. But they are available for pre-order at Target. You can just search at Target if you're interested. But let me share a couple of the movies here. Let me see if they load up properly, and then I'll share the screen.
Do you still own the artwork, or is that something that Lionsgate wanted to own?
No, they own it. Yeah. So a lot of these, when you're working with production studios, they own the artwork outright. So that comes into play when you're working on your price and your contract. But yeah, so basically both of them were owned, and they can use whatever they want for that. So this is kind of what the close-up looks like of the actual packaging.
It's gorgeous.
It goes a little fast, but
I guess we'll have to buy the steel book in order to own a print of these.
Yeah. So, and then this is kind of like what the whole package would look like here. Let's see if this one opens up. So they added the text and everything. I didn't have to worry about that on this round, but that's what the slipcase will look like.
That's gorgeous.
So yeah, it was fun, and you never really know what's going to happen. I mean, obviously, when you look at the because there's a huge fan base for steelbooks, and you kind of want to follow how that's going. And obviously, if you jump into that category, the comment sections is pretty brutal, but a lot of it's out of my control because everyone's like, well, why would you do a combo? Why would you have these 2 movies together? Why won't you have Terminator 1 and Terminator 2? Well, Terminator 1 was a different production company, and Lionsgate only has rights for Terminator 2. It was Target's idea to move forward with it, so that's what they were doing. And then once again, as like the artist, you're doing what they wanted to do as far as like the framing, so you do it to your best of your ability, but everyone's gonna kind of be their own critic and be like, why are they doing a combo? It doesn't make sense. But I still really enjoyed working on the project, and I can't wait to see it in person. So
it's a home run, man. I mean, it's I think that's something that Mondo does really well too, is like pair artists with specific franchises that work really well together. It's a dream come true to be like a huge fan of a property and then be able to work on that property. So that's awesome. Was it a one-time fee, or are you collecting royalties from this one?
Oh no, it's a one-time. Like they pay you for the right to use the artwork. So yeah. It's basically, since there's a front and a back image, they're paying for the front image and then the back image outright to use however they might need to in the future.
And did you negotiate? Was there a lot of negotiating, or was this one of those instances where you were just so honored you didn't even bother? Because that's happened to me a few times where the pay is so great and the subject matter is just like even better than the pay is. Then, I just don't even bother with trying to negotiate a fee.
Yeah, well, Lionsgate is great. And I had gotten an email like, hey, we want to talk about a steelbook project. And I was like, oh, I wonder what it's going to be. And like going through their library, and I didn't know they had the rights for T2, and I wasn't expecting that. And then they're like, oh, well, we want to do a T2 Total Recall. I was just like, draw on the floor. It's like, of course. And then they're, when you get into the price category, and this was going to be my first steelbook working with Lionsgate, obviously I've done other ones in the past, but, I actually went a little bit lower for that. It was still a great price, but I went lower than what they were expecting in terms of this, because it was our first time working together, and I wanted to, do the best that I could. And then by going through the process, and when I submitted the invoice, because we went through quite a few rounds of revisions, and then by beating the deadline, they just gave me an extra bump at the end, which was great.
And could you tell, I imagine I know why, but could you explain to the students why you went lower?
Well, for one, I wanted to establish that relationship, and two, it was my first time working with them. I felt comfortable with, the price that I had set forth. It was something that was even above what I've done with Sony, and with the time frame, I felt comfortable with that amount of pay, for buying it outright. So I was more than happy to do that, and my reason behind that, and talking with the art director, was exactly what I said there. This is our first time working on this steelbook together. We've done things in the past. It was a different, artwork and different projects. So the pricing was different, of course, but I felt comfortable with it, and I wanted to establish and build that relationship. And that's where I went with it. And then because they were so pleased with the end product and working through the process and beating that deadline, that they just out of their own just gave me a bump at the end, which was great.
Relationships are key, right? I mean, that's,
yes.
I would have done the same exact thing with a dream client like that. While we're on this topic, thank you for showing us the process on that. It's gorgeous. Like those drawings are, I mean, it's exquisite in black and white as well. While we're on the Lionsgate bits, does anybody have any questions for Cuyler on anything we've talked about? Process, budget negotiation, just the overall experience of working with Lionsgate to produce these illustrations? If not, it's okay. Go ahead and jot things down in the chat. Again, remember, these folks are here for you today. So, ask them questions. That's the benefit that you all have from being in this session right now, is that you can talk to these folks. So I highly recommend that you start thinking about things you want to ask these folks at the end. So with that said, the non-fungible token. oh God. This has become so popular these days. Almost like annoyingly popular for us who like the tangible things. We just went from talking about something you can own in the physical realm. And I imagine that this has become intense because of the market value, the growth in market value. I think right now we're at a market value of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, 300, close to 340 million, where even just a couple years ago, it was around 40 million. And, I may be wrong on those numbers, and I'm sure that they're changing, but nonetheless, it's around there. And that's a ridiculously huge increase in just a couple of years from what I've read. And it seems like the pandemic has had something to do with that as well, right? Like it would make sense. So this all started, I think, around the time that Tumblr was getting really popular. So how many years ago was that? I can't remember. Tumblr, I mean, it was a little while ago. And
almost a decade, right?
Right? Yeah, like it's not really a thing anymore, or at least to me. And yeah, right? It's like I feel like I remember MySpace before I remember Tumblr. But I read that an artist named Kevin McCoy took the whole reblogging idea and started sort of thinking about the idea of digital transactions, it kind of inspired by the idea of reblogging. And I don't know if he's at the center of this now or on the outskirts of the whole NFT thing now, but that's as far back as I went on this search, was Kevin McCoy and a friend of his sort of breathing the NFT into existence in a sense. So in basic economics, geez, I never start sentences like that. So the fungible asset is something that it's basically something that has units, and it can be interchanged like money in a sense. So the difference, I think, with money, and y'all could stop me at any point, is that you can swap a $10 bill for two $5 bills, right? And it'll have the same value. But if something is non-fungible, that apparently doesn't work the same way, right? So it means it's unique and it can't be changed out with something else. It's like living in a world where someone's like, hey, can I get those 4 quarters if I give you $1? And the other person's like, no, dude, my dollar is way better than those 4 quarters, man. So it's like you can own a print of someone's original art, but the print will always have less value if the original art exists. So the NFT is like the original piece, but it only exists digitally. Am I close on this, y'all?
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
So what with the NFT, right? You can tokenize your art to create like a pseudo certificate, I guess, of authenticity, right? And then the folks, who want to buy it and sell it and trade it, they can then do so. Then there's, I believe, a record of who owns what on the blockchain. So your stuff is kind of like guarded by a ton of computers around the world. And what's, I think, most appetizing about this to me is that you can have what they call a smart contract. I feel like such a grandpa right now. And that sort of like gives the artist a cut of any future sales, which is really rad, right? So every time I buy like a Cuyler Smith card for $15 at 1988, and then I see that same card going for 45 on eBay, a part of me thinks, man, how rad would it be if Cuyler picked up a percentage of every resale of that card, And that idea alone makes the art world so much more lucrative than I could have ever imagined, So you've minted your first NFT, Patrick. Tell us about that experience and what's with all these folks shooting you direct messages asking about foundation invites.
Oh yeah.
Explain this to all of us like we know nothing. And if I said anything that you disagree with, just clarify it.
Totally. No, I think to start, just to preface, I think we're all more in the same boat than you think with this whole new NFT wave, because I don't think there is currently like, one guy or a bunch of people that know everything about it, because it's just changing every day. Like it's so volatile. Like everyone is so brand new to the thing. And so I think it's just crazy because the minute you actually emailed me to do this talk, so much has changed. A lot of the stuff I've been doing has changed because of this. And like I probably would have told you different things than I am now back then. So just to preface, there's no like crazy textbook answer to a lot of this stuff. And I think that's partially what's really cool about all this, because it's so new and everyone's just trying to get a piece of it. And that's why it's become so crazy annoying on everyone's timeline that you can't, kind of scroll anywhere without like, all right, first NFT out, check it out, like boom. But essentially, yeah, I jumped on the wave. I'm in a bunch of like random Discord groups that are, I have a bunch of friends in the 3D industry that have, taken a gamble, minted their NFTs, and some of them have made even upwards of like 300 grand in art. So like crazy amounts of money doing this thing. And it's pretty unfathomable just to like hear these kinds of numbers just by posting and minting an artwork that you would have posted as like a daily or something that took you maybe like a day or an hour or something. And so I did, although I did mint a couple NFTs and put it on Foundation, I've kind of like, I've directed my attention towards a bunch of other things since then. And I really haven't been promoting them much at all, actually, because the workload I've gotten in other types of areas within this whole NFT space has kind of exploded. But yeah, the Foundation is where I did mint them. And yeah, I haven't sold any of them yet. I have not been push them out that much. And yeah, the whole thing with these platforms, the big ones are like Nifty Gateway, super rare, and then you got like ones like Foundation, Known Origin, and then it kind of trickles down. And essentially, a lot of these bigger ones are invite only by the people from the site. And that's why everyone is just like applying to all these things, trying to get their hands and get verified on these sites, mint their artwork, because everyone's saying, oh, I saw this guy made like $69 million just, with this one crazy like collage of his work. And like, I do a bunch of work and I'm posting it. And so everyone's kind of rushing to this gold mine thing to do that. And so some of the sites like Foundation, if you sell your work, if you make like one sale, I think you get like 5 or 10 invites. And I believe that number has changed, since they've been going. So everyone's heard about this, like, oh, can I get invites? I've gotten like probably hundreds of DMs at this point asking for invites from Twitter or like Instagram and all this stuff. And that's where that one render came out of. I literally made like a 3D render inspired by everyone asking about like the invites and stuff. But yeah, so that's the whole Foundation thing. And the cool thing is all of these sites run differently. I mean, Nifty Gateway has these cool things where they're like open auctions, where like the way they do it is like they'll hype you up for like a couple months, and then on this one day you'll release like a few types of artworks for, let's say, like $1,000 per artwork or 1,500 or whatever. And then it's kind of confusing, especially if you're just taking this in for the first time. But at its simplest form, when you think of minting an NFT, you're like, okay, this is one of one. This is the only token, and whoever purchases that owns the token. And a lot of these sites, you can mint more than one version of the same artwork. So multiple people can own the same artwork, and you can say like, I have like the third edition or whatever, if you have like 20 editions. And so Foundation, currently it's only one edition, so you can put an artwork up and there's one of one. And the way that works is you set a reserve price, which is like, here's the price. Let's say it's 1 Ethereum, which is currently just over $2,000 at the moment. So Ethereum is a cryptocurrency. It's like one of the bigger ones. It's just below like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's like crazy expensive, but it's like already so much information. I feel like I'm rambling already, but I'm trying to get through like just like 0.5% of like.
No,
whatever.
yeah, you've utilized a variety of what I would call the crypto vocab words, right?
Right.
These were things I had to read about as well.
Right.
So you're talking about sites like Foundation, right? So for those who don't know, those are sites that host the NFTs, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and some of them are invite only, and you've also mentioned the word Ethereum. I'm forgetting how to pronounce that.
Oh, Ethereum.
Ethereum. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So a lot of these sites currently are the way you purchase these NFTs are through a cryptocurrency called Ethereum.
Okay.
And,
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and so and so there's this whole thing. So it's not like you can really just become, you can just purchase an artwork with money. I believe actually some of them you can, like Maker's Place, and possibly Nifty Gateway. But some of these sites are using Ethereum, and to do that you have to have like a Coinbase account or any kind of like system where you buy and sell cryptocurrency and convert it from the US dollar. And then you have to get this thing called like a Metamask, which is like a digital wallet, which is like the bridge between where you're like converting these cryptocurrencies and what connects you and allows you to purchase things like an NFT. And so once you buy an NFT, it ends up in your wallet or whatever, your digital wallet, and that's where you can kind of see. And because it is cryptocurrency, it's really volatile. So your wallet will be fluctuating, as well as the price of the artworks with the current price of the cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And so it is a lot. And then I guess back to from my tangent earlier, some other cool ways of doing it are like these platforms like Nifty Gateway, where they have these things called open editions. So if you're lucky enough to be approached by a site like that, they'll do something where they have this huge schedule where they have like a bunch of big artists. And each day they'll have like a different drop is what they're called. And so usually they'll hype your work up for like 2 months. Everyone's like, okay, cool, this is sweet, I want to get in on this. And then you'll have like a 5 or sometimes 10-minute window where it'll be like, all right, 7 p.m. is the drop. And so for like 5 or 10 minutes, your artwork will be live on their site, and whoever purchases the artwork, usually it's going to be less than like a one of one. So let's say like $1,500, a grand. And so everyone who purchases the artwork in that 5 or 10-minute window will get their own minted edition. And so you don't know how many minted editions there will be until that timer runs out, and whoever got theirs got there. So that's, you can make a lot of money by minting just one on a platform and getting like, 1 Ethereum to 5 to 10, however much, depends on a lot of factors, versus a bunch of people buying and minting your artwork. And then you can see the potential, it might be worth less in the short term because it's like, it's like one of maybe 100 or one of 200, however many people buy it. But then you see, like you said, you're getting 10% royalties every time it sells in the secondary market. You're just collecting from all these people reselling your artwork, assuming they are doing that.
It's really a smart concept. And to go back what you said about the MetaMask wallet, that was a question I had, and I had to find that. But essentially, Patrick mentioned the MetaMask wallet, and basically this is something, it's basically, you can get it as like an extension or like an add-on to your Chrome browser. And then from there you can charge it with Ether, if I'm saying that right. And basically, Ether is like the cryptocurrency that runs on Ethereum, or the Ethereum blockchain. And you can buy Ether with a debit card, right? Or like a credit card, and then deposit that right into your MetaMask wallet. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think you'll have to have at least some Ether in your MetaMask wallets to create your first NFT. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're right. So you'll so most likely, like, you connect one of your bank accounts, like a checking or something, to Coinbase is the platform I use to buy, sell, trade, convert cryptocurrency. And so you'll do that, and then you'll take your wallet address, which is like this long code, and that's how you can send it. That's like where you're sending it to from Coinbase or something like that. And then, sorry, what was your last question again about the?
I was just saying, like, I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, correct. Yes, the Ethereum. Yeah. So minting an NFT also comes with, it's unfortunately not as easy as just like, okay, cool, I want this up there, boom, it's out there. You have to, it costs some money to mint and list your NFT. So minting is just the process of making it a token, and listing it is the process of putting it on the platform for people to buy. So those are like two separate applications that cost what they call gas. And so, so the gas typically is around, from what I've seen, is it fluctuates, but anywhere from like 60 to 120 bucks to mint. It's in Ethereum, but converting it ends up being, I think, like 100 bucks to mint and then 100 bucks to list. Could be wrong. It fluctuates. So
yeah,
may not be.
Yeah, I've seen different prices as well. And again, just as Patrick said earlier, there currently, unless I'm completely unaware, is no textbook for this. And just to be clear, Professor Dabbs and I were talking a little bit about this last night. But, the content that we're discussing right now, from what I can recall, this is all pulled from multiple sources. Like I've read about this stuff from the Washington Post, Politico, CNN. I'm not 100% sure that what we're discussing here is factually accurate. I know that it will continue to evolve. There was someone named Dale Clifford at SCAD who mentioned at one point to me his technique, or perhaps the university's technique, on how they take student comments or reviews about faculty and sort of find commonalities among the comments. So for example, like, one student, if one student out of 70 students say you have bad breath or whatever, but there's not even one other comment about your bad breath from other students, they don't tend to take those comments too seriously, right? They don't really take them into consideration. So when it comes to giving the faculty member feedback, they're looking for commonalities or consistencies, where they're reading the same piece of feedback over and over. Like, this instructor's critiques take too long. Then they seem to gather that information to use it to provide faculty feedback on areas that they can improve, right? So bottom line, that's how I look at and absorb the news in general. There's always going to be some outlandish statements and false claims out there, sort of circulating the media, but it's the commonalities that really pique my interest. So it's like everyone's talking about NFTs, and there's a tiny fraction of those folks who are talking about cryptocurrencies and how they're going to lead to a new virtual government that will overthrow the current government. And that's one of the pieces, the pieces of news that immediately sounds ridiculous, right? But then there's so many more people who are writing about the hazards that NFT pose to the environment, right? So which one of those sources of information am I going to, I guess, consider as serious? Is it the NFT virtual government, spawning, or is it the fact that NFTs would perhaps pose an issue to the environment? So that's I just kind of wanted to put that out there to everybody, that we're trying, or at least I'm trying to take these things that are being written about non-fungible tokens and trying to find commonalities with the folks who are writing about them. So yeah, and so I guess from there, not all of these sites are invite only, right? Like there's one called Rarible, rarible.com, that I found that anybody can just kind of mint their own NFT, and it sounds like you're within the ballpark of what I've been reading about prices to mint your NFT. So I guess if folks wanted to do this for themselves, they would just need that MetaMask wallet. They would need to deposit some real cash to convert it to Ether. And then from there, you can create your NFT, and you'll be given options on whether or not your work will be, I guess, a single piece or a multiple piece edition, or a timed edition, as Patrick was just talking about. And, you can limit your pieces to however, 50 or so. And then you can upload your artwork, right? And then, is that somewhat the process from that? Like for one of these hosting sites, upload the artwork. If it sells, they take a percentage, right? So that would be something to be mindful of.
Yeah, I think the percentage varies from site to site, and then like some places like Foundation, I don't even think yet has a secondary market, so I don't think you can resell on their platform as of yet. Like when I first joined the platform, they didn't even have a search functionality or a follow functionality. It was like, I mean, when I tell you it's like a free for all, like this place is like the Wild West, like it is like crazy. Like these sites are changing by the day. And also it's definitely good to note that, before everyone in here starts like minting like 80 things, it's definitely, I know it's very easy to see like, oh my God, this guy made 300 grand in artwork. This guy made, all this, but I would go on a limb to say that is definitely not the gold standard and like what you should expect. I don't even think it's worth saying you would expect to even sell an NFT unless you are someone with like, a big name, or you've talked to a crypto investor who is interested in buying your work. So it's definitely still a huge risk. You are, you're putting, I guess you're gambling a couple $100 to mint and list. If that's nothing and you're like, screw it, let's run it, then by all means. But I definitely wouldn't say it's for sure. It's like definitely a for sure thing. Like this is going to sell, no problem. Using myself as an example, I got, I think followings on like platforms like Instagram mean a little bit less in this world. Like, of course, it depends who's following you and like how much, people are into this. But another big thing is, your fans on social media are not necessarily, crypto investors or even know what that even is. So it's crazy. Like there's also no current correlation between the quality of artwork and these payouts. Like I've seen a 3D rendering of literally a cube, like a default cube, sell for like 50 grand. And there's like stuff. So there are some artists that are just like, what is going on here? Like, what, you're taking the meaning of what it means to be an artist and like the technical aspect, and like, that's the thing. You're not really working for a client. You're working for some random person who's got a lot of money who just happens to think something looks cool. So it's just like this whole new thing that it's breaking every rule that we've like almost ever learned. There's people who are like scribbling on stuff and just like, because they have like a certain aesthetic going on, they're selling their NFT for a huge amount. And then you have people who are like highly skilled for like years and years making things, and are not, won't sell them, or selling them for like 0.5 Ethereum. It's a free for all.
What do you think's gonna? I mean, especially since the way you've described this, like, what do you think's gonna happen in the future? Because I've heard that there's like a variety of folks somehow obtaining high res, and I guess maybe even in some cases, I would imagine low res copies of someone else's artwork and minting them as if they were their own. Like I imagine that in the digital realm, it's probably a lot easier to infringe than if I were to try to sell like a Leonardo da Vinci fake, piece in the real world. Like who's policing this issue? And is it as big of an issue as the media is making it out to be?
So to my knowledge, I haven't, I've heard of a couple things from one of my friends where it's like they didn't take like an artwork of theirs per se, but people who get inspired by other people's work, who clearly made some stuff that are very close in similarities, minted their work, and I had a friend who was pretty upset about that. But you're right, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, what is preventing me from just going on Google Images even and just like, oh, let me screenshot this, let me NFT this once I'm already verified on a platform.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, and I don't even know the answer to that. Like, I don't know. That's why they are trying to verify artists on a lot of these platforms. But it's like, once you're verified, that is a good question. It's like, but
yeah, and
I don't really know.
And it sounds like the beginning of something really interesting. I think one of the reasons I seem to take this a little bit more seriously than some other folks who have said that this is just a fad is because it seems like China just opened their first cryptocurrency bank. So it doesn't seem like something that's just going to go away, even though there's so many problems. Like I read, I forget where I read it. I think maybe it was The Atlantic, that one of the problems with all of this is that you're not actually buying a digital artwork, but you're instead buying a link to it, right? So, and the link takes you to a website of a new startup, I guess like maybe like Foundation, that's apparently likely to fail within a short period of time, like a couple years or so.
Right.
So in my mind, it's like, how's anybody really going to be able to identify or verify whether the linked artwork is the original? You know what I mean? And maybe again, I'm like a grandpa when it comes to this.
Right. Well, I think that's when it comes down to, whether like Foundation fails or some of these other sites. I believe this stuff is still going to always be in the ledger or the blockchain. And so everything's going to be still like transcribed in there, which of course is like, from what I've heard, is like impossible to hack or whatever. But that is another one of those questions that a lot of people ask. Like one thing you should know is like when you're minting your artwork, you're actually not giving away the copyright or the intellectual property or anything. You're literally just selling that token.
Mm-hmm.
And so like whether someone decides to screenshot the artwork or whatever, print it out, like that's not really what it's about. It's about, and this is kind of where it gets down to like the really cool stuff of NFTs is like, let's say you have like, let's say you're a football fan and you buy a jersey, and the jersey has like a signature of the guy, and you're like, okay, physical object, very cool, boom. But it's like you still don't really have a correlation with the artist. It's kind of just like you have the thing, he signed it once, but he doesn't know about you, you don't know about him, whatever, unless he friends with him or something.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that is cool about the NFT thing is like once you purchase like an artwork of like an artist you really like or you admire, you're your name's like tied to them in a sense on the blockchain. Like there's literally like a tie there, and there's like a connection. So it's like, it's hard to think of a more engaging way to not only support, but kind of be involved in this whole thing, you know? So
Yeah.
it is a cool, and not to mention some of these guys are even coming out with physical tokens as well. So if you buy like a digital version of an NFT, some people like Beeple, of course, made those really cool like collectible like glass enclosed video frames. Like his artwork that you purchased will be like slideshow animating on the thing, and it's like really cool. You can put it on your shelves, your desk, whatever. It plugs in via like USB-C, and then it comes with like a QR code. When you scan it, it goes to the site and shows who owns it and like the cool facts about it. And that's like going above and beyond. That's like crazy.
That's so cool. Yeah,
Cool.
there's so much of this that's awesome. I think the biggest thing with me right now that I've been reading a lot about is that they're bad for the environment, right? Like that's like I've been seeing some folks posting on social about that, you know, saying like, I'm not partaking in this NFT thing, it's bad for the environment. And at first I just didn't understand why, you know. But apparently each sale, or I guess transaction rather, like whenever someone sells or buys, or I guess even records their work, you know, this takes more and more computing power to get it all done, right? So I've heard that, and this is something that blows my mind, but I've heard that minting an NFT on a blockchain uses something like weeks, months, and sometimes even years of an average US citizen's energy consumption. And that's crazy to me. Like that, I don't know if I believe that, but it's one of those things that I said earlier, where it's like, I'm seeing more and more people write about it. You know, it doesn't seem like the crazy news source, you know, put out this ridiculous thing to cause drama. But if that's true, that again, that's outrageous, right? Like more computing power means more resources being used, right? But then again,
For sure.
I've seen folks claiming that there are now, as you said, things are evolving, right? That there's green NFTs that are now in the mix. I've also read the term clean, you know, just clean NFTs.
Right.
Have you heard anything about this?
I don't know a ton about, you know, some of this, and I obviously don't want to speak on the topic, especially having to do with the environment. But what I have heard is, I don't know if you know of Corridor Digital.
No.
They have like a YouTube channel. They're like big VFX guys, like really cool YouTube channel. And I was watching their video, and the way they kind of broke it down was like, it's not, you know, people are directing their anger at the wrong things. Like I know people who have been chewing out artists for NFTing their work. You know, these guys finally are getting their big break, you know, minting their artwork, getting paid what, you know, I think they should be getting. And then, but in reality, I think it has more to do with again, like the technology behind it, and less about like physical artists, you know, harming the environment. But it's definitely a gray area. And I think that's why I think Ethereum 2.0 is a relatively new thing. And I think that from what I've heard, I could be totally wrong, but from what I've heard is a little bit better for the environment. And like you said, things, you know, clearly the whole industry knows of this issue now, and Beeple has even released and done a few drops promoting, you know, the cleaner stuff and like going towards foundations, kind of, you know, doing this in a better way. And researching in that kind of, so I think obviously this first wave of everyone rushing to this, it probably was like, whoa, like didn't realize this made such a crazy impact on all of you know, ecosystem. But I think just going forward, it's like anything else. Like it's like when cars used to be like insanely worse for the environment, and then I think cars are still bad for the environment. But the analogy, it's like the cars using up all the fuel, all the stuff, and then the greenhouse gases, and then, you know, we're going to electric now. So it's like clearly we've learned from the past.
Totally. And you could, and like you said, you know, you could also make the argument that art fairs, or, you know, these outdoor shows and festivals, you know, geared toward either specifically selling art or maybe in accompaniment with a musical act or whatever, You can make the
Right.
argument that that's bad for the environment. So it's like there's that,
Yeah.
that sort of devil's advocate when it comes to that, But when I read things, and sort of map this all out in a way that I can kind of understand, it becomes strange, but the way I've come to understand the energy problem is that it's a long game, right? So that's being played. So the more a computer works, the more energy comes about. And from what I've come to understand, this is called mining. And this is only something I've recently understood because I didn't really understand this before. But so if you're mining blocks on a blockchain, right? Like this is designed to become larger over time. And to solve that problem, the puzzles become tougher. And then the miners get more computers, and then the puzzles get tougher. And then the miners move to places with cheap electricity, and then the puzzles get rougher, right? And then the miners pick up warehouses, then they have to put air conditioning in the shipping containers, and the puzzles get harder and harder, right? So according to the internet, after like a decade or more of the cryptocurrency, the market of the cryptocurrency thing growing, we're kind of like left with a network that uses more energy than a country like Argentina. And I guess maybe like you said, when it comes to, the mistakes that we make at the beginning of something, I guess a variety of folks come into play in order to remedy those things. So I would imagine that NFTs, non-fungible tokens, will have to have some sort of like regulation. I guess maybe like now, like you said, it's the Wild West. But I imagine that, as folks start to see the potentials for these issues, that there would be some kind of like federal regulation or some sort of federal stake in the game. It's hard to believe that it would advance without that in the mix, like I forget which university, but I think it was Mexico State or University of New Mexico, something like that, put out a study recently talking about how every buck of Bitcoin value is responsible for 49 cents in health and climate damages in the US. And, and I was like, what? Because in my mind, I'm like, I'm still on the side, like, it's like hard. It's like I'm in the center, where I'm like, this could change the reality for an artist to actually not rely on companies and publications and the typical clientele that we're used to, so that they can live more than comfortably, and pursue creative careers, which is even these days, I would imagine they'd become less stigmatized than they are, but are still stigmatized, by parents, talking about not sending their kids to school and all this. And so I'm still, it's there's the good, and then there's the stuff that I'm worried about. So I guess for those of you who are interested in knowing more about this, there's this, I don't know if you've been to this place, Patrick, but there's a website called cryptoart.wtf. And there's like a guide there, or multiple guides, for that can kind of help young, I guess, artists who are interested in getting into the crypto game sort of like educate themselves a bit more on sustainable crypto art. Because I'm kind of an environment nerd, like immediately I'm like, oh no, the environment, like that's always me. So
your profile picture is green.
Well, yeah, that's actually, yeah, it's taken at school. They have this green screen at school, but I didn't do anything fancy with it. My wife and I just went and took some photos for the year.
Good pick.
Yeah, thanks, man. T-shirt I'm wearing is green as well. So you've minted your piece. You're the creator. You're still the owner. You perhaps made a royalty claim, which I've read is something that you can do as an option. Like you can choose whether or not you want to pick up royalties from something or not. And then you finalize it. It's up for grabs, and you got all your info plugged in, and then you can track your bids. And then you can also track, I'm assuming on some of these sites, you can track the views, how many people have viewed your minted piece. so I guess, I mean, I guess those are all my questions, unless you have anything else to add to the whole thing. Maybe Kyler wants to jump in. I know that I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about what's happening with you in 88 when it comes to this or not, but if not, just tell me to stop and I'll stop.
No, yeah, it's all still like, in the works. And similar to what Patrick said, like when this came out, one of my main concerns was I didn't want my stuff to get taken and then minted, because my stuff gets stolen all the time and used for various other things. So that was my first reaction, was making sure that like that wouldn't happen, right? And of course, everyone, when that, a couple of weeks ago when it first came out, I was like, wanting to jump in on it. And I had the same concerns. You read about these things and you don't know what's right and what's wrong and what to trust as far as like the information, because there's so much confliction. And as far as like the artist community, it's just, you're either on it or you're not, and you can get, shamed for it. And, I know a lot of artists that are doing great, both traditional and NFT, and they're able to kind of go both ways and make it work. But then others are just, losing a lot of their fans or their clients based off of whether or not they're going to jump on this. And, we had talked about doing it, and I would only do it if it was, because I still don't understand everything. Right. And there's so many unknowns about it. And obviously, you hear about like the clean NFTs and other variations. And, so it's kind of back and forth. And, I've lost sleep over like whether or not to jump in or do it. And right now things are on hold, and I'm okay with that. And then you'll see like articles, and I don't know how true it is either, where it kind of seems like it's hit the ceiling, and the prices for what was going on when it first happened a couple of weeks ago or months ago, it seems to be slowing down a bit. I don't know how true that is either. But I mean, it's tough because what was it, like PayPal is now accepting various cryptocurrencies, I think, and other big name institutions are starting to explore this NFT market, because there are positive sides. Like one, like being able to get percentages of your sales after the fact, just like you're mentioning, like if you sell something and it blows up, you get that original chunk, right? But then somebody else can go make like $600 off of something you did just by buying it and reselling it, which is great for them. There's nothing wrong with that. But as an artist and as a creator, you would kind of like a little piece of that too, as it's moving on. Right. So, I mean, there's definite like advantages, and I'm still very curious about how this is all going to move through. And, obviously it's very popular right now, and everyone's talking about it and trying to figure out, is it going to work? How long is it going to last? There's so many variables and there's so many unknowns. It's a toss up for me. Like I still don't really know. I see positives. Obviously I don't want to have anything affect the environment. You don't know really, because there's all these conflicting articles of whether or not, Ethereum actually is taking that much energy. And, then there's the clean FTs and the altered versions that they're putting out now. So I don't know. The more I talk about it, the more confused I get.
I think, yeah, I feel like we're all on similar pages, and I think maybe one of the other issues I have is this fear of balking at something that I remember when I first really started thinking about this, Patrick had messaged me about this, and he was like, "Are you getting on this?" And several other people had asked me if I was going to jump in. And the first several times I was like, "What are they talking about? I don't even understand what are they talking about?" And so I remember Patrick saying something like, "Get in now," or if you're wanting to get in now. And so I guess maybe I'm also just curious, like, is it going to be harder to mint your work in the future, specifically to Patrick?
I don't know if it'll be harder. I guess, and this comes down, like I probably had a different opinion on this whole thing even when I reached out to you back then.
But what is the impetus of like jumping on this now? Like,
well, I think the main thing is, especially when this first started taking off, it's like, I think it's like anything else. Like if you're one of the first people to have an artwork and get recognized on a site, I think you're going to have a better chance of, being seen on like the main page or the recents or something like that, versus if there's like hundreds of thousands of people, uploading artwork and minting stuff at the same time. Like, now we can't even scroll without, So it's just like posting, at this point, it's like posting a video on YouTube and hoping it just goes viral. Like, it's just like, if you were posting, like back when YouTube was like, there were 8 videos or like 20 videos and you post a really cool video, it's like, oh, everyone who goes to that site's going to see it. You're going to be one of the first people who gets a lot of subscribers. You're going to be, you know what I mean? So it's like,
that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because I experienced that on various social media platforms. But I also didn't. And I had some folks kind of educate me on this. I came to the Instagram game, I would say, later than most. And a buddy of mine, amazing artist named Chris B. Murray, he had said something, like him and I did a collaboration where we did a Stranger Things poster a couple years ago. And it was, I had, I forget his name. He plays Lucas on Stranger Things. Caleb McLaughlin, or I think is his name. And he had regrammed a portrait I did of him, and it was just really cool. It was like, oh wow, that's so cool. And Chris was like, yeah, back in Instagram's heyday, like at the inception of Instagram, you would have picked up like 15K followers just from that. And being someone who was new to the game, I was like, what? That doesn't even sound real. And he's like, yeah, it's because I guess at the beginning, at the inception of something that sounds cool, something that's interesting, and it's, you know, catching fire, all sorts of unpredictable things can happen. And I guess that's why some folks say things like, yeah, back when Instagram was good, or, you know, so on and so forth. So that makes
the algorithm.
Yeah. With Instagram, it's also like the algorithm has changed so many times to, you know, what you used to be able to, like, it used to be like kind of like a hierarchy thing. Like the most recent you saw, and like you would see, like, if you posted a picture, your followers would most likely see it. Versus now, it's like the algorithm, the way they show people content. It's like some people it like really favors them. Some people it just totally, like, you know, you won't see it. Like, it's crazy. Like even when I look at my analytics on Instagram, it's like I have almost like 76,000 followers or something now. But when I post a video, it's like I'll get at most 20,000 views. So it's like the vast majority of people who even follow me won't even see that video.
Oh yeah, I feel like, yeah, it's much worse for me. It's definitely, but I feel you. I mean, it's the engagement on there is just not what it used to be. You know,
well, because they're controlling, because they want you to pay for the promotions, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
because everybody wants that like or that comment, and they want what they used to have in the normal amount of exposure that they would get. So now it's just like a business. Like, you know, I keep trying to do things like at different times and try to gauge like what's going to work, as well as like different hashtags. It's a gamble like anything else. And just like Patrick was mentioning, everybody's on this now. So it's a lot harder to get your work seen, and it's a gamble after you mint it, whether or not it's going to be fruitful. It's tough.
Yeah, it has to be regulated at some point, the NFT thing, I think. Like it can't be wild west forever, you know.
Just cluttered right now.
Yeah, it sounds like a whole lot. And that's why I brought up the Instagram thing. I feel like the whole NFT craze mirrors the beginning of something exciting that can happen on other social media platforms. And just like what Kyler was saying earlier about, you know, folks like as an artist being concerned about having your work stolen or sold for higher prices. Even as a buyer, like as a fan of Cuyler Smith's stuff, like I would be happier to know that if I'm buying a card that I've been looking for forever of his, that he's getting a percentage of that, you know? So I feel like even from the purchaser's standpoint, that's one of the positives of the NFT is like you said, Patrick, like it makes you a little bit closer with the creator, the content creator. Like that'd be like, it's like if I had the option of paying, you know, $100 to somebody who has, you know, one of Kyler's cards that are now officially sold out versus paying $150 or $200 for one that he's going to get a cut on. It's like, well, why wouldn't you want to support your, you know, the folks that you're fans of?
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the last things I guess I'll say to it, because I'm running out of things to say about NFTs at this point, but I think it's one thing that's really interesting to think about is like, and people said this on the corridor video, and I was like, oh, that's really true. It's like, you know, at a very simplistic form, it's like you have a buyer who's buying it, your piece of work. So think of like the buyer, like usually we're used to in the freelance world working for a client, and your goals are at odds. So you're trying to do least amount of work for the most money, and the client wants you to do the most work for the least amount of money, versus like, you know, whoever's buying your piece, like you guys both want this piece to go up in price. You guys want this piece to sell. You know, so it's kind of like a cool thing where you're like, you know, the buyer is in a sense like your biggest fan, like, and he sells it. If he does, you know, everyone wants this thing to go up in price. Like nobody wants it to go down. Even the person who's buying it from you, like you want to know you're investing in something that's like going to appreciate in value. So it's like a really cool like partnership as well.
Yeah, totally. And I know, and I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. I know the NFT conversation isn't an easy conversation, and isn't necessarily a fun one. I've just been, you know, really yearning for like an honest discussion on what we're all thinking.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just so tired of scrolling and trying to learn about this on Instagram. You know, just having a conversation with other creatives is I think a positive thing, and it really kind of helps to unveil the curtain a little bit for the students who are wondering about what this is as well, you know. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a bit. Does anybody have any questions or comments for these artists while we have them with us in the session? Anything in the chat?
Or like, what's an NFT?
Basically,
Hey, Strahle, Maggie Strahle, this is Cuyler and Patrick. Cuyler, Patrick, this is Maggie Strahle, one of our students at MTSU.
Maggie.
hello.
So it stands for non-fungible token.
I feel like I'm just absorbing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that's like one of the biggest things too. Like, I don't know if you guys know the platform Clubhouse.
Oh, is that where people talk? They just sit and talk?
Yeah, literally, it's one of the coolest things. It's literally like this, only they're kind of like an open forum thing. You can make them private, but it's like, that's where I've gotten a bunch of information as well. And you can kind of just drop in on these live conversations. A lot of them have to do with like NFTs and people who have sold stuff. And, you know, because there is no textbook you can buy about all this stuff right now, it's literally just has to do with, you know, big people in the industry talking. Like Beeple is in there a lot of big players in the game, and a lot of people talking. You can even like click this button that'll like raise your hand, and then you can get added to one of the guys who can talk. So I've been in like rooms where it's like hundreds of people listening in, and then like, you know, 5 moderators and like 10 people who are talking about this thing. So it's like really insightful. Everyone's on the same page. And just a really good like place you can learn about all this stuff, soak it in, and talk to a lot of people about it.
Well, cool.
That sounds great, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that,
go ahead, Maggie.
I think just the biggest thing that I'm like thinking about is whether it would be something I would even consider doing. Like, do I have, like, how do people find it? How, or why, I guess, why would people want it? Like, I know that there's like supporting your artist, like an artist, but I don't know why that's just hard for me to grasp. Like, why would you want this digital thing?
I think it's the same question as like asking like, why would you want like Ethereum? Why would you want Bitcoin? Why would you want to purchase a stock in a company? I think it's just like, in a certain sense, your artwork is turned into like, in a sense, like a currency, or this thing that can go up in value or down depending on how big you get as an artist. If someone really likes you, and they want to support, that they just want to support you. So honestly, I think one of the safest, if you do decide to embark on this, but you want to take like the safest route, I mean, I would maybe even just wait to find someone who's like super into your work, and someone who's like super passionate about you as a fan, all this stuff. And you're just like, yeah, I mean, if you want to, you know, support me while also like kind of have your name attached to my stuff, and like be able to have one of my first NFTs or tokenized artworks, then it's like a guaranteed win-win. You will get a sale out of it. That person owns the token, and kind of don't end up like me, who put your first artwork up and it's like didn't even sell right away. So there's so many ways to do it. I just tried like a bunch of different routes. But like I said, at this point, I'm like putting my focus towards like a bunch of other focuses within this thing, like making NFTs for like professional athletes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I looked at your stuff and my mind can't wrap around how you even do anything like that. It's like, it's 3D illustrated.
Right.
I don't know how it works. You put little tutorials up and I'm like, what? How did that turn into hair? I don't know.
Oh, the hair stuff. Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that.
Well, Patrick did a long demo for us. It's on my YouTube channel.
I missed it. I missed that.
It wasn't hair. But...
Yeah, you may have missed it. He did like a True Blue mug. Whoa, motorcycle. He did a True Blue mug and slapped the MTSU logo on it. And he just went step by step. It was insane. It's like completely this thing that was completely foreign to me. And now it's like, just by having watched him do it, I understand a lot of what he's posting like these days, where he's like, buy my fire pack, check out my new flames pack and all this. And it's like, oh, okay, I get that. Cause he had demoed how he did this and that. And it makes sense why you would have something like that. And
right.
I think,
I forgot to plug that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, to tell everybody about I sound like
there's no like 3D artists in here, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, so it's kind of like it's pretty applicable just to like 3D artists at this stage. But essentially, I started making packs. When did we have that conversation? Was it last year?
I honestly, man, it feels like the days. I don't even like.
It feels like yesterday, but I can't tell if it's been like 5 years or.
Yeah, like something happened. Like my wife and I were talking about something that happened just a couple days ago, and it felt like several weeks ago.
Right.
Like I've become
because I released my first pack, which was like an HDRI pack, which like these 360 environments to wrap around your scene, which will light and give it reflections. But I'm not even sure I released the first one at the time we were speaking. So that's just been, at this point, I have like 4 different products out that cater to different 3D artists.
Patrick, I got it pulled up here. I want you to give me your best guess. How long ago did we talk?
Oh boy. I want to say like late November.
Okay, yeah, it's 5 months. I literally thought I spoke to you a couple months ago.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how bad I am.
Wait, was it November?
Yeah, I posted this on where are we? We're in April.
Yeah, I had not done it.
Yeah, you were much closer than I was. So
wow, that's crazy.
And just to kind of piggyback off of what Patrick was saying as well to you, Maggie, I totally know that feeling, especially being somebody who collects VHS tapes. Like, why would I want to do this? I think it's similar to a lot of folks who had record players and they're like, why would I want this cassette or this cassette tape?
Yeah.
I think that it becomes hard to figure out how it's lucrative for you when something is at its inception, when it's so close to just being new. It's hard to know what the output can be, and that's particular, like one of the main reasons why I wanted to chat about this with other people, aside from just looking at it and reading about it, is to see the value and find the value. And I think as Patrick and Cuyler have mentioned, and I think we can all agree that at least part of the value is the idea of the royalty, the idea of like just as that dude Kevin McCoy had thought about the reblog as transactional as opposed to something you just do for free. Like that's such an interesting idea. And it has the potential for you to be able to not have to rely on, clients. And that is really cool. It seems like with the royalty idea, it seems very similar to the life of a surface designer or the life of an art licensing illustrator. Somebody like Eleanor Grosh, who I bring up often because I just love her art licensing stories. She's somebody I met in Philly, and she just like collects checks in the mail. Like that's just like what she does, you know. She just gets royalties from so many gigs that she had done in the past. And that's such a cool idea, you know, and I think that's part of what's so appetizing about this to me.
Right. Really. Yeah, I think it just comes down to like are most of you guys trying to be like freelance and stuff, or
Yeah. Sure.
yeah, I think like that's one of the main things for me. Like fortunately I've been able to always have like a bunch of different streams of things going on, especially like with this newer one, the products. Like I would like look into that. Like I assume you're like an illustrator, like draw and stuff.
Me? Yeah. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just
I mean,
talking.
like, I don't know. And again, I don't even know that realm at all, but I know at least from doing this firsthand experience that like releasing any kind of, especially digital asset, um, it just works out super well because like you don't have to worry about a SKU or like your inventory running out, or it's just once you have the digital product, it's literally just like you're watching people buy it, and you know their assets, you know, you making them yourself, you can use them, of course. That's why I made them originally, but it's like the best case scenario because you don't have to like remake a bunch of stuff. If it runs out of stock, they're just digital and they're always going to be there. So like, I don't know, like stuff like Photoshop brushes I've seen people make, and just like thinking about different packages you can make as an artist that you would even want to use that you get out to the world. And because you're the artist, it's so easy to market them because you just use them in your illustrations. So it's just like super, I think it just like super works super well with like artists who can, you know, make art of any types.
Especially with, and this goes to answer your question, Maggie. I think the NFT works especially well for animated illustration. There's this this illustrator named Mason London, I believe.
Oh yeah, you showed it.
Yeah, and he's minted a variety of NFTs, like just all animated illustration. And so that is a better explanation to me as to the relevance of it. You know, Mace, you can't own an animated illustration as a print, really. You know, that's something you can only really enjoy and appreciate in a digital format. So that's something to think about. And I think it also, again, it's things are strange at the inception of something. You know, I was reading the other day about, but it's the evolution that brings it into a way that makes more sense. So I think that as the years go by, you'll understand why. Maybe not necessarily for you, but for why it's important for other people. Like, for example, like I was reading this article about how this mom was trying to bribe her son into doing his homework. And she was like, I'll give you $10 if you do your homework and stop playing this game online that you're playing. And this kid was completely disinterested in the $10. And it's like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Like me as a kid, you know, I would go nuts for that. But he instead asked her for a currency for his game so that he could, you know, make his character stronger or something, right? And I feel like a lot of this seems foreign to us, but that's a great example of how this will evolve, I think, at least partly. So it looks like Cuyler says he'll have to leave. Anybody have any questions for Cuyler before he's gone?
Yes, I have another class. Sorry, I'll have to get out of here in a couple minutes.
No worries. This has gone on for a long time. I really, really appreciate you joining us, man. Anybody who doesn't follow Cuyler, definitely check out his work if you're interested in illustration and gallery work. And yeah, man. So again, I really appreciate you joining us today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
All right. So unless anybody else has any other questions, I guess I'll go ahead and end this session. But again, thanks so much to both of you for joining us today. I know that the folks who aren't here today, they're going to watch this video later, and I'm sure that they'll be able to take something from it or multiple things from it. So thank you for your transparency, both of you, and most of all for your time.
Probably be even more confused.
Well,
thank you guys.
There's a light at the end of the NFT tunnel, I think.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Big time. Thanks for having us, man.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really you let me know if there's anything you need, both of you. I'm there for you, for both of you.
Sure.
So have a great weekend, everybody. Be safe, enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you all soon. Have a good one.